Sorry it was a little warm in here. We ran out and grabbed some fans and things like that. We tried to make it as cool as... sorry, I lost my voice at karaoke last night. I thought I was Ronnie James Dio, but I learned I'm not. We ran out and grabbed some fans and stuff, but the humidity was a little bit hot today, so I apologize for that. But you know, we worked around it as best we could. For those that don't know, Stephen Yen was delayed. He had a flight this morning and then a connecting flight, and the connecting flight was late, but he is here and he is signing overtime in the gallery. But so thanks to him for doing that. He literally got on a plane, or he went to the airport at 3 this morning and landed here at 4 in the afternoon. So not fun. So those things you just don't control, I guess. The first 6 rows that we have up here are for VIP, so we try to leave those open for them. Once again, I can tell you that this show means more to me than you can possibly imagine. It was founded with the intention of honoring my dad. When I was a kid, my dad took me to, we used to have double features in those days. We had big screens with 40-foot screens and velvet curtains and chandeliers like this and larger hanging in the movie theaters. Nothing at all like the experiences today. My dad took me seeing, every Saturday or Sunday we would see Hammer horror movies with Christopher Lee or Vincent Price double features. Thank you. So the intention of this has always been to, number 1, to honor my dad, and to number 2, share the love of horror films with, you know, people that have the like mindset. You know, we've been doing this since 2003. The convention world has changed a whole lot since then, but it's to the credit of many of the stars that come here. We have a couple stars that are here this weekend that attended our very first show and helped us really kick it off the ground and take, you know, my passion for horror and to share it with people and honor my dad. You know, they helped us tremendously to do that, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those people at the first show. And one of them is going to be on stage in just a couple minutes. So thanks again for coming. I really, really do appreciate it. Your support, you know, show after show, year after year. I used to worry about, you know, how we would do and, you know, if people would come. And now it's at the point where, you know, we're selling out and we're trying to not overcrowd the place. We had problems with counterfeit wristbands in the past, which is why you have to scan the wristbands and stuff now. A lot of other things came up, and hopefully we fixed most of that, if not all of that. So, and your support, show after show, year after year, really helps us do that. So give yourselves a big round of applause. So one of my favorite films was the first Hellraiser movie. The closest of modern horror could get to the feeling that I've got years before that when I watched Hammer movies. So from Hellraiser #2, please welcome, her character was the female Cenobite. I don't know why she didn't get a name, but her character was the female Cenobite. Please welcome Barbie Wilde. Next up, if you were at the VIP party last night, you saw a man with chocolate all over his face and his hands. He looked like someone that had too many X-Lax. Please welcome Butterball himself, Simon Bamford. What I mean by that, we had a Butterball cake at the party, and we had Simon cut the cake. And Simon doesn't cut a cake like a normal person would do. He wore the cake. So. Also, next up from the very first Hellraiser film, the Chatterer, Nick Vince. And last but certainly not least, the person who helped make Monster-Mania a thing. We had all these plans when we were going to do a convention, and my son and I are huge Hellraiser fans, and the first person we both said that we needed to have at our show was Doug Bradley. And please welcome lead Cenobite, Doug Bradley. So generally what we'll do is we'll throw the questions out to the audience. If you would, just raise your hand. If we call on you, please stand up. There's two ways that we could do it. We could pass a microphone around, which turns into like an Olympic gymnastic thing when the person in the second row wants to use the microphone and then the person in the 13th row on the right wants to. So the easiest way, I think, to do it is just if you would raise your hand. If we call on you, if you would, just stand up and throw your question as loud as you can up to the front, and we'll try to repeat it and then answer the question. So who's going to be the brave soul with the first question? Yes, sir.
I have a question for Barbie.
Okay.
If you could name the female Cenobite,
She did.
What would her name be?
Well, okay, there's several answers to that question. Now, in the first film, you'll notice the character names were lead.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow!
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Clive Barker. That's a surprise. Thank you very much, Clive.
I was saying, before that spectacular entrance, that during the process from 1 to 2, this is what I've heard anyway, that the makeup crew's nicknames were given to the characters. So lead Cenobite became Pinhead, Chattering Cenobite became Chatterer, yeah, poor bastard, AK, and Fat Cenobite became Butterball. Now, from what I can understand, the makeup crew's nickname for me, my character, was Deep Throat. Yeah. So now you may recall, during the same time, there was a rather notorious porno film called Deep Throat. And they, for some reason, the production company felt that this was sort of, considering this is a film with very heavy S&M themes, you know, they thought, oh, this is outrageous, we can't possibly have her be called that. So I got lumbered with a rather unromantic female Cenobite. But I believe you've got, didn't you have a nickname for her?
Oh, we're not going to talk about that.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to interrupt. I'm here just in case there were scattered questions that you guys had not yet addressed, or something I could talk about while I run with you up in my room. I thought I'd join my merry crew here. Yeah, so... And
I have one more little thing to add to that there was an anthology in oh God, I can't remember when it was, and they asked me to write a story, and so taking inspiration from the brilliant original novella on which all the Hellraiser mythology is based, The Hellbound Heart, I wrote a story called Sister Celice. And if you're a Roman Catholic, you'll know the Opus Deis use a celice around their thigh to remind themselves of Jesus' suffering, and I thought that's a good name for a Cenobite. So, such sweet suffering. So basically, that's, you know, another name maybe for her. It's a little bit, you know, posher than Deep Throat. So.
Okay, right here. So the question to the panel was, what was their favorite memory of working with Clive?
Okay, so my makeup was quite brutal, as was Nick's, and very, very claustrophobic. And there was one day that we'd been in the makeup a long time, and I found it very distressful, and we didn't get to be seen. The note came back that we weren't going to get to shoot the scenes that we were in the makeup for that day. And I'd had a pretty bad day anyway because I'd lost my lines that day because I couldn't say them through the teeth. And so I sat in the makeup and sobbed. I started crying, but because the makeup was on, nobody knew. And then Clive appeared with a bottle of Jack Daniel.
And that fixes everything.
And a straw.
Oh, boy.
That was my favorite.
Yeah, my favorite moment, there was one morning, I wasn't feeling too well. And so I was sitting there, and Jane Wilde was with me. Now, of course, my fear was that I was going to vomit, and with the teeth in, I was going to choke and die. So Robin Vigeon came out by the side of the set and said, "Are we here? Nick's not well." And Jane said, "No, yeah, it's okay. We know we'll get the teeth out, and he'll be absolutely fine." And Robin said, "No, leave him in. Bring him up on set because Clive wants to film him being sick."
I think that's a little unfair, but true. You use the moments when they're presented to you. I think in my own defense, this is a very, very cheap picture, as you know. It's a $900,000 movie. And so we had very, very limited funds, frankly. The most elaborate funds went to Doug Bradley's makeup. Actually, that's not strictly true, I think, Doug. I think probably the strictest, it was Oliver, wasn't it, who, the skinned Frank, who was probably even more expensive than you were, right?
Probably worked more days, so probably used more.
Yeah.
But
he passed away, by the way. I don't know if you knew that.
Yes.
Oliver just passed away, unfortunately.
Yes.
He was an amazing man. He was very, very thin. We chose him because he was very, very thin.
Are you sure he was very ill? He had had a serious heart attack.
He's still with us.
He is.
I won't contest the point. Okay. I was only told that 2 weeks ago. So. Yeah. I hope he's alive. Let's hope he's alive.
Yes.
He was a very, very thin man, because he had to have an entire layer of skin put on him and still look skinny. Yes? And he smoked a lot, 50 a day. And so when we came to the moment when he'd be resurrected, we had a cut from his resurrection to his him being in his shirt and fully dressed. And he said, "Well, what do I do now?" And I said, "Well, what would you do?" And he said, "I'd like a cigarette." And if you look at the movie, that's exactly what he does. There are two, strictly speaking, ad-libs in the movie, and that's one of them.
Really?
And the other one is Jesus Wept, which is the last, the last lines Larry speaks, and rather Frank speaks actually, Frank in Larry's skin. And that was, I actually talked to Andrew Robinson only 3 months ago, and I said, I never really asked you why did you say that? What made you come up with that line? And he said, well, one thing, it was short, and the other thing was the line you gave me was fucking awful. So I thought, well, and so I always say that whenever I can, I tell that story something because I think it's a great line. It's a great line. It's a great way for somebody to sign on, And I thought, there could be no better way, in a way, to celebrate Andy's creativity. And I would hate to think that he would I would ever take on my own account something that he created on the spot, I should say. He said, I want to say something different, he said. And I think he was tied to the board that he was being made up on and would eventually, you know, hang on for 8 hours. And that's a long time on that board. Yeah, and he was there, and he was pissed, and he was so pissed. And I don't blame him. And I said to him, he said, I don't want to say this down line, it's dumb line. And I said, well, you know what, Andy, you've been here for 8 hours, say what the hell you like. And he said, okay, just run the camera. And that was his last line. He just said, Jesus wept. And what are you going to do? I mean, you can't improve on that. It's the shortest line in the Bible, and it's a good biblical quote. And straight into, it went into the movie, and I cannot take credit for it. It's Andy's. Yeah. Any other thoughts that while I'm here, I'm just going to pop in for 20 minutes and head out?
Well, I'll pick out. I'm at a disadvantage because I've worked with this reprobate for 50 years. So, you know, memories of sitting backstage listening to you wildly ad-libbing during the school play.
Yeah, for sure.
To Is There Anybody There, in which Clive was playing a vicar reading the Jewish Chronicle upside down. But if I come to Hellraiser, I'll go to an inadvertent mistake. One of the wonderful things about working with Clive is his on-the-spot enthusiasm, because he always has ideas on the hoof. He thinks on his feet, and if something is working, he wants to push it to the limits. So when we were filming the scene of the Cenobites' first arrival in the hospital, firstly, I smoked then, so Clive thought it would be a great wheeze to make me wheeze. So before I delivered the line, "We'll tear your soul apart," I had a cigarette, and I'm on my mark, and I'm going. "We'll tear your soul apart." So the theory being all the smoke would come out. Clive then decided that he could improve on this by putting a smoke machine between my feet under my skirt. So I'm now standing with my legs apart with the smoke machine underneath my skirt, which it's a novel experience for me.
But one he's repeated often.
Since then? Oh, every single. Getting increasingly lightheaded from all of this, and Clive saying that this is wonderful, wonderful. It looks like you've come straight from the pits of hell, and you're still burning, you're still smoking. We can smell the bitumen and the sulfur. It's wonderful. So we did the scene, and then on my next filming day, I came in, and Selwyn Roberts, the first AD, said, Doug, some bad news and some good news. The good news being that we were being paid by the day, so I was about to get an extra day's filming. The bad news is we're going to have to film the hospital scene again. And I said, why? And he said, well, you know the smoke machine gag? It looks as though you're on fire. When we were watching the rushes, it was like we were waiting for someone to run in from the side with a fire extinguisher and hose you down. So it's a great idea of the pits of hell and the smell of sulfur in practical terms.
It's funny you mentioned that thing about stuff coming up, because I think that, yes, I know, Simon, you couldn't be seen, and same for Nick, but performances are performances, and people's presences, even behind masks, change the mask, yes? I think one of the things which is underestimated about all these forward people is that the job you have of projecting through a piece of latex, a thick piece of latex, is incredibly difficult. It is not just the way you move around. Sometimes you can move your face. In Simon, Nick's case, you couldn't even move your face. But the threat, the sense of danger you get from them, and Doug, of course, had the advantage of having, you know, a movable face, but still there's a lot of latex. How long did it take you to have that makeup put on?
Early on,
Yeah.
5 or 6 hours.
Yeah.
Because Jeff and Roy were really kind of feeling their way with it. It's sped up to 3 or 4.
But that meant you had to be
Time.
you had to be in the studio at 3 to be on set at 9, something.
Well, certainly on Hellbound, my memories are clearer.
Yeah.
It was generally, I would get up at 3:30. I would get up at 3 to be picked up at 3:30 to be at Pinewood at 4 because we were always assured that we were needed for the first shot of the day.
And then you wait to return at 2 in the afternoon, right?
By about 6 o'clock in the evening.
'Twas ever thus. Yeah.
So, but it was generally that kind of time, 4 hours generally was allowed. But I'd rather have gone through those 4 hours than the shorter amount of time that Nick and Simon went through for the misery they were in once they made
Nick genuinely was in the bonnet. I mean, you were very, very sick that day. Very, very sick. But the other thing to said about all of this is we have CGI up to gazoo now, right? And I think we are the lesser for it, personally. It is inconceivable that there could ever be what these guys did through a computer-generated image, in my opinion.
And for me, the birth of Frank sequence in the movie, for me is one of, speaking objectively, as far as I can, is one of the most extraordinary sequences in horror movies. If I'm right, I've said this many times in Q&As, that it was basically improvised and thrown together on the hoof between you and Bob Keane.
Sure, we had £25,000 to do it all in, and each shot was a different idea, a different gag. We had reversed meltdowns. Yes, remember those? So we had heaters on this wax, which would then appear to form. And we had, straight gags like sticky arms through holes to the floor, and all this stuff with this, what did they call it, that super glue? It's not super gunk, it was that nasty stuff.
Oh, we called it elephant cum.
Yeah, we did call that. Yeah, and who jerked off the elephant?
It was a very, very happy elephant.
Very happy elephant.
I've never seen an elephant smile.
But we did have a lot of.
A lot of it was wallpaper paste, I think.
But there was stuff. They had a stuff. They had a big batter. It really did look.
Right.
It was,
It was that.
I checked this the other day. It was soap flakes and hot water.
Okay.
Oxford powder, soap flakes.
Which is
and
what
hot
they make
water.
custard pies out of, for the custard pie gag.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you speak from experience?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, pantomime. That's amazing.
See last night's cake.
No. He stabbed his butterball cake in the eye, and they plucked it out, and then he smudged it all over his face. It was a moment of imaginative theater.
But it was black icing, and it stained all over my face, all over my hands. And everybody was too polite to say, you really need to go and sort that out. Apart from Doug, who said...
Actually, everybody was asking for pictures.
Nice.
Simon said to me, have I got it all off? I said, there's a bathroom in there, if I were you.
The Fred Flintstone look, right? Yeah.
I genteelly removed Pinhead's nose, having picked it first with my little... and one tooth, and ate it very daintily.
Oh, good.
I want to go back to the point about handmade effects, because I absolutely agree with this point. The great thing about that too is that if you and Bob had done that sequence the following day, it would have been slightly different. Because you would have had different ideas, things would have worked in different days, in different ways, and it means that the special effects that you see in Hellraiser are unique. They have a handprint, they're handmade, and they're markedly different from the special effects in A Nightmare on Elm Street or the special effects in An American Werewolf in London.
You're right.
The problem for me with CGI, while it's a brilliant tool that allows filmmakers to do things that would otherwise simply be impossible, everything looks the same.
Well, there's another thing though, and I am, as you all know, a technophobe. I'm not very good with technology. So for me, the idea that I can direct somebody who is in makeup, you can't direct somebody in CGI. You can actually go to the technicians who are doing it for you, who are very often very, very brilliant men and women, and you can say, look, this is what I'm looking for. And next time you go in a week, they will drop an approximation of what you're looking for. And then you say, well, that isn't right and that isn't right. You cannot stand over, for long weeks and days, because often you're still dealing with shooting the picture, or you're cutting the picture, or you're scoring the picture. So you have to trust them. And the vision that you have in your head is never quite what appears on the screen. And the great thing about having an actor in makeup, particularly with superlative makeup, as these gentlemen were, and ladies, is that you can, there's somebody in there, there's a human being in there, which means that the human being responds to the direction that you give them. I can say to Doug, look, let's play it down a little, let's play it up a little, let's be a little bit more growly and dangerous, let's be a little bit more subtle and almost sexy about things. You can do all kinds of stuff you simply cannot do with CGI. I mean, I'm working right now with a wonderful director called Michael Doherty, who did Godzilla 2, who is a dream of a guy, and we're doing a television series of Night Read together. And Michael is directing, writing, directing, and I'm producing. And he's a superb creator. And I had, of course, I should have realized that all of Godzilla would be CGI. And I don't know how the heck you get through that as a creator, knowing that you're handing over almost everything. The Cenobites appeared first as drawings, which you guys saw, I think, long before we actually made them as creations. So they were drawings first, and then they were maquettes, and we had, your faces were all, I remember Doug having his face cast. That was a terrible night. Remember that stuff? Having the plaster put on you and all that stuff. Then you manage to build up an image, and that image goes on you, and then it's still Doug, it's still an actor. I've worked with Doug as an actor since he was 15, right? And so,
school play in Liverpool.
Absolutely. So I had a long, by the time we made Hellraiser, it was 13, 14, 15 years later. And he was my best buddy. And so I could talk to him through all that makeup and say, look, let's go back to what we know as each other as friends, as best buddies, and let's make sure that comes through. I think that they're going to make some more Hellraiser movies, I think, and unfortunately I think a lot of it's going to be CGI. And I say unfortunately not because it cannot be brilliant, because sometimes it can be brilliant, but sometimes it can seem dead in the water. And I will always advocate actors above. If it's possible, I would say, obviously it can't be Godzilla, but you can advocate an actor, because an actor is a human being, and in the end, a monster is only good to the extent that they are human.
Was that a fight that you had on Hellraiser? Because presumably it would have been easier to put extras in the makeup and then employ a voiceover artist that way.
That was the first fight, because not only was I not wanting to hire another, I was hiring my friends, right? And in the first movie, it was actually my cousin who played Barbie's role. So I was going, here are four of my, but in that first movie, 3 of my best buddies. And I was going to them because firstly, the movie was being made for nothing, and I knew they would trust me to do my best with this. It was my first.
You knew we were cheap.
I wrote and directed that movie for £19,000. Looking back on it, £19,000 to write. They told me that it hit $33 million worldwide. And I thought, 19,000 but when you look back, I would not, this is the thing they know, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, you're going to make movies eventually, and the thing they always know about you with your first movie is you do it for nothing. They know that. They know that you are so eager to do this, right? That whatever they need to pay you, however they need to insult you, they will, and then eventually you'll say, hey, whatever it is. And I remember it was 2 in the morning we eventually did the deal with Nick Long, our lawyer. We did the deal in LA, and I said to Nick, how much are we being paid? $19,000 to write and direct. You look back on it, and I think, you know what? They gave me the chance to do it. They gave us all the chance to do it. And here we are, 31 years later, yeah? And hearing you.
33 since we shot the movie. 33, 1986.
The life of Christ, 33 years. I just came in to interrupt you and say hello to you and tell you I love you all and thank you for being here. I will leave you with these good people.
I'll tell you a story of my first brush with prosthetic makeup, no pun intended, which was at the hands of Clive. Way back, this goes back into days when we were still in Liverpool. We did a production of Oscar Wilde's Salome, his play of Salome. And I was playing, Clive was playing King Herod, and I was playing Yochanan, John the Baptist, who is blind. So Clive got paper mache, toilet paper and wallpaper paste, and paper mache over the upper part of my head and face, creating sockets which he was then able to fill with gunge and blood and bits of wool that were hanging down my face to be bits of tendon. So that was my, and of course the end result of that.
You were blind.
I was completely blind.
And you were led around by a piece of rope.
Not round my neck. Was yes, round my waist and tied off to the back of the stage.
So you couldn't get away.
Wouldn't wander off into the audience.
But you know what's interesting is I had completely forgotten that. And what age were we when we did that?
Oh Christ!
Well, if you say so, no. How old were we?
Well, I think we're still around
At school?
15, 16. I mean, are we barely
15, 16.
When did we do? Is there anybody there?
Yeah, probably about 16 or 17. What's interesting?
Not many of you know Clive wrote a Whitehall farce.
But what's interesting is that the tradition followed on into you guys. I mean, in other words, you weren't the first blind actors I knew. Yeah, it was a theme. And trust me, I would never do it again. So next time I'm hiring you, I promise you, no more blind actors.
Thank you.
My friends, I have to go, but I just wanted to say hi to you and thank you. I'll see you next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, please big round of applause for Clive Barker. Honestly, did not know that was happening.
I asked Dave. I said, I've heard a rumor Clive's going to join us. Dave said, no, absolutely not.
I had tried.
Can I just say one thing? Although Clive and I didn't work together in Hellraiser 2. Getting emotional. I feel very privileged to have been able to enter into this extraordinary world. And I didn't want to go to the audition for this film because the first film scared the out of me, you know? So I didn't, Cenobites, what were they? I've never seen a monster like that. And here's the genius of Clive Barker. Not only had he created these incredibly scary monsters, you know, a new monster, he also created something that was really iconic. And still, I signed a bunch of them today, and it's the lament configuration. And that's two unique things that are in this story, just one of his many brilliant stories. So
I wanted to say as well that things have rarely wasted with Clive. If something doesn't quite go right, he will put it away in his mind for something else that's going to get used. So the eye things he's used again, but also the smoke thing. The whole thing of filling you up with smoke and looking like you're on fire. When we did Nightbreed, and my character was going to go on fire, before each take I had a guy coming in and filling my pantaloons up with smoke. So he put that away in his brain and thought, okay, guy on fire, that's what we'll do next time if we ever get to that. And it's exactly what he did.
And did it work that time?
Yes, no it did, because I was supposed to look like I was on fire.
I meant to say to Clive, of course, reshooting the hospital scene also meant he got to write Kirsten's boyfriend out of the scene.
He also
that's another discussion.
He also seems to like to put things all over your face. It sounds like
I try not
he likes to cover your face.
Doug, weren't you offered another role as well? Or wasn't it either the moving man?
Oh God, no.
No.
No, I'm sorry, this is what I heard. So.
This before.
Once in an interview, a long, long time ago, in a galaxy far, far, looking far away, Clive always intended I would play Pinhead. And I'd been talking to Clive on that basis and so forth. And when Chris Figg called me and said, now is the time we need to start talking turkey, there's Pinhead. There is one other part available, which is the mattress delivery guy. If I could take anything back, it would be the point in this interview where I said, this is true. There was a moment where I thought, thinking purely as an actor, Hellraiser was my first movie, and I'm thinking purely, well, maybe if I'm going to be in this movie, it would be a good idea if people can see my face. So if I'm going to auditions and people say, what have you done lately? I can say blah, 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 blah. And they'll oh yeah, of course we remember you as the mattress removal guy. So for a split second, I had that thought in my head. There was never any doubt in my mind, actually, that I was going to play Pinhead, nor was there ever any serious discussion of me playing the mattress removal guy. But this has followed me around for 30 years.
And I brought it up. So sorry.
Now even my fellow actors are accusing me of it. But none of it's true. Of course, the role of the memorable role of the mattress removal guy went to another actor who had worked for a long time with Clive in the Dog Company, the theatre company that we had prior to Hellraiser happening, Ollie Parker, who then reprised his role as the mattress removal guy in Hellbound, and then played Pelican in Nightbreed. And is now a director of merit in his own right. So tangled webs weaving there. I was going to say something else, but I've lost my thread. I'll come back to me. Carry on.
And another Clive has repeating themes, and I played the mattress removal man in The Book of Blood.
There you go.
Yeah, there's a lot of mattress removal men in Clive's films.
Yeah, I think possibly I wouldn't be sitting here answering questions about my performance as the mattress removal. Maybe, possibly.
Thank you so much for clarifying.
Oh, speaking of fellow actors and particularly actresses, have you seen the clip on YouTube of Imogen Borman talking about us getting hooked on painkillers?
What? There is
a film clip in which she's being interviewed by somebody about Hellraiser, and she says to camera, "Oh, I know they had such a terrible time with the makeup in the first film, and particularly the costumes, which was so uncomfortable. They were in serious pain with back trouble." Indeed, Doug is still addicted to painkillers to this day.
Doug?
Well, that's what she said.
No, she's going to be confused. It's Grace. I'm not saying that Grace...
I think it was me.
She had back issues, and I don't think she got hooked on painkillers. Don't get me wrong. Grace is not a drug addict, as far as I'm aware. But the only person I know who did have terrible trouble with her back was Grace, because...
Well, actually, because I still...
But I think that was pre-existing. I think she had scoliosis.
Yes, no problem. The costume was designed to take into account her back pain. And, I think maybe one of the reasons I got the part, other than being a professional mime, was that I might have fit her costume. And so when they were drawing the laces in, it was pulling my lower back. And I started getting really bad pain, back pain, because of it. But, I was fairly spry. And so once I stopped having to be this corset, twisting me a bit. It was a minor thing, and I certainly didn't get addicted to painkillers, so I'm not quite sure where that came from.
No, but it's out on YouTube now, so...
Oh, great!
It can't be taken back.
It must be true.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a couple more questions right here.
Well, as one of the writers of those comics you're talking to, because I contributed about half a dozen stories to the original Hellraiser comics. I like the idea of the... it's a hard question to answer, when your voice is going particularly. I like the guardians of the box. I've always been kind of fascinated by the guardians of the puzzle boxes. In the first film, he's the trampy guy who then becomes the flying thingy guy. I never quite understood. So I think that to be kind of interesting. The backstories of the Cenobites. Barbie and I have both written backstories. Most recently, I've written a backstory for Chatter called Prayers of Desire. Just how did a 12-year-old boy end up in hell? So I think there's so much stuff that you could go in and explore. So yeah, Guardians of the Boxes particularly I'd like to explore.
The Scarlet Gospels that Clive wrote with the big battle that Pinhead has with the political struggles of hell, I think that would be really, really interesting to see, and also because that has come from Clive's imagination as well. But it would have to be with Doug, obviously.
We might have seen more of that in Hellbound if we hadn't lost a chunk of budget. There was the idea of Leviathan.
Oh yeah.
Which Pete picks up in Hellraiser 3. He has Pinhead saying, "My God was diamond and black light." That's the only time we hear Pinhead make reference to a god who was any kind of hierarchical superior to him. We see that diamond briefly in that glass shot. Oh Christ, I wish Clive was still here we talk about not using CGI. There's a good old-fashioned glass painting shot in Hellbound. But because there was a financial crisis, Black Thursday or Orange Tuesday or whatever it was called, and it meant that because of the shift in the exchange rates, which happened just as the budget was about to be transferred from Los Angeles to London, 1/3 of the budget was wiped away. And New World couldn't make up the slack. So as far as I'm aware, there was even talk about postponing the picture because they were so worried about it, but they decided to go ahead, so a lot of stuff got removed, and I think we would have explored some of those ideas. There was, I think, wasn't there an idea of a machine in the depth down there that was spitting out Cenobites, creating
the engineer, and
I think I always felt I would like to have explored more the angels-demons dichotomy. We tend to, as the series go on, land heavily on the demon side, which I think is a bit of a lazy assumption that develops about the nature of Pinhead and who he is. And there's a beat right at the beginning of Hellraiser, actually the first time we see Pinhead, after Frank has been pulled to bits, Frank and Larry Skin have been pulled to bits, we see that at the beginning of the film. Pinhead makes his way through the chains, and then he puts the jigsaw of Larry's face back together in the blood. He moves the pieces of skin, and it always struck me that that's an almost childlike thing of playing and of wanting to reconstruct the human being out of the destruction that he's been responsible for with the hooks and the chains, and that always seemed to me.
It's almost like Frankenstein, isn't it? Frankenstein putting the monsters together.
I just want to say that I obviously would like to explore the more feminine angles of the story and, you know, the female Cenobite side. But are we really...
Yeah, we're going to take one last question.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, guys, what are you up to next?
Oh, don't ask that. Let that. I've only got one more question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go right over here. Yep.
For Doug, in '92, you were in a Motorhead video for Hellraiser. What was it like working with Lemmy, aka
Lemmy.
Yeah, well, Lemmy, where to begin? Hellraiser 3 was going to have an entirely rock soundtrack. And in fact, I got a phone call at one point. They were going to put a Hellapalooza tour together. All the bands that were contributing, including Nine Inch Nails, were going to go out on tour, and they wanted me to go out on tour with it and MC it. And fuck, it never happened. The only... then they changed their minds and put an orchestral score on it, not Chris Young, sadly. And the only song that survived was Hellraiser, which was written by Ozzy. Ozzy, for some reason, decided he didn't want to record it. Lemmy got it. Lemmy said he wanted to do it and wanted to do the video on condition that Pinhead was in it and Clive directed it. So we shot in a condemned theatre in downtown LA, and I arrived in a stretch limo and got out, and here on the sidewalk, we weren't allowed to smoke inside the building. Here on the sidewalk is Lemmy. And he immediately greeted me, and I bummed a cigarette from him, and that was my introduction to Lemmy. He was standing on an LA street at 10 o'clock in the morning, smoking a cigarette. And then we came to the scene where Lemmy and Pinhead play cards, and he plays the ace of spades to win and loses his soul, and blah, blah, blah. So we sat across this card table, and we discovered that we had a great love of classic British comedy, particularly British radio comedy. From the Goons on down, and he had an almost perfect recall of of these things, and round the horn, and none of this means anything to most of you, but we sat and traded what we could remember of this. There was a flagon over here, was a glass thing, it was empty, and I could see as we were talking, Lemmy kept looking at this, and he had a word with his people, and the flagon was taken away, and shortly after that it came back filled with amber liquid. And while the Prince of Darkness sat and demurely sipped his Evian water on one side of the table, Lemmy made his way through the entire flagon of amber liquid, like you and I might drink orange juice. By about 11 o'clock at night, he was just beginning to, you know, if he got up from his chair, it would be a moment of that. You know, and then I went and sat in the stalls and watched Motorhead play Hellraiser. So I'll take that. It was a pretty cool day.
Okay, what we'll do, if you guys wouldn't mind, if you could let the fans, if you could stand up maybe and let the fans take a couple photos of you as a group.
We can do that.